Welcome back, everybody, to Niners Now. I'm your host, Brady Grustas, at GrustasBrady on X. You can follow me there. Ding dong, the witch is dead, everyone. Jake Moody has officially been waived by the 49ers. We're going to talk about it all today, and of course, stick around until later in the show, because there's already a replacement for Moody on the roster. And one of the 49ers' biggest stars is now on injured reserve. Before we get into it, go ahead and subscribe down below, leave a like, leave a comment, and let's begin. The Jake Moody era is officially over in San Francisco. Folks, I cannot believe that we are really here. Moody was drafted April 28th, 2023, which is 867 days ago from the day that you are watching this video. For 867 days, Jake Moody has been this team's kicker, but no more. On Tuesday, the 49ers waived their former third-round pick, Jake Moody. I still cannot believe that they spent a top 100 pick on a kicker, and one who was this bad at that. I think that there was a real chance for Jake Moody to be good in the NFL because he was nails for that Michigan team, and he was finally starting to figure it out in the NFL too. Last year, Moody started his season making 13 of his first 14 kicks, over 90%. He then suffered that high ankle sprain, making a tackle on a kickoff return against the Cardinals, and since that injury, he's only made half of his kicks. It's really bad. That injury, of course, I think ruined Moody's career, I think it's fair to say, given that Moody is no longer with the 49ers. Although his confidence was completely shot by last year, it was clearly time to move on from Moody. We talked about it plenty on this program all summer long. Now that he's gone, I want to acknowledge that it wasn't all bad from Jake Moody in his 49ers career. As we mentioned, he had that strong start in last year. He briefly held the record for the longest field goal in Super Bowl history. Many forget that. And he went 6 for 6 in last year's season opener against the Jets. And he was always a good extra point kicker, I thought, except for that one that he missed. But that's about where the positives end for Jake Moody. Issues with kickoffs, there were issues with long kicks, there were issues with medium kicks, and last week there were issues with short kicks. It was just time to move on. I hope that we never, ever have to talk about a kicker as much as we talked about Jake Moody. There were non-stop discussions about him for 867 days, and I am so glad that it's finally over. And of course, this shouldn't have to be said, but don't be one of those people who sends Moody or his family any sort of hate, because he really does seem like a good guy. He just clearly could not make it work in the NFL with the 49ers. But as I mentioned earlier, the 49ers' next kicker is actually already on the roster. Mere hours after Moody was cut, the 49ers brought in Eddie Pinero for a kicking tryout and signed him promptly after the workout. Things move very quickly in the NFL. Pinero is statistically tied for the third best kicking percentage in NFL history, with an 88.1% career kick percentage. That's tied with current Steelers kicker Chris Boswell, who by all metrics is a top 3 kicker in the league right now. Pinero's very good from inside 50 yards. He's one of the best in football. So why is he still unsigned, and why did he not even get a camp invite from an NFL team this summer? Well, his range is not much longer than 50. Pinero's career-long kick is 56. He is not one of these new-age cyborg kickers with insane legs who can boot it from over 60 with great accuracy. Pinero's accuracy is his strength, not his power. So in many ways, he is the polar opposite of Jake Moody. But let's admit, Pinero's range is certainly limited, right? And I think that affects the ways that teams view him. I will say, I think that Pinero is a really interesting fit for the 49ers in particular because of this skill set. One of the main reasons that Jake Moody was so damaging to this team was that his inconsistency with short yardage kicks led to a lot of empty possessions for the offense despite some long drives. We saw this in week 1, right? There were multiple drives where the 49ers offense made it all the way down to the red zone, stalled, settled for a field goal, and got 0 points as a result because of a Jake Moody miss or a Jake Moody block. That is a really, really easy way to lose games. Empty possessions. right? Now with Pinero, all of those kicks under 50 yards are pretty much automatic. And the 49ers offense hasn't had much issue moving the ball at all lately. It's the finishing in the red zone that really needs to improve. So if the Niners can just move the ball into Pinero's range, which they've shown they've been able to do so far, there should be way fewer possessions that end in 0 points. I mean, think about it. Jake Moody missed a 27-yard field goal on Sunday. He just missed it. It hit the uprights. Eddie Pinero could make that kick with his eyes closed. Now, don't fact check me on that. But my point is, adding Pinero will sort of mask this red zone issue that the 49ers have had as of late. And because of that, it'll raise the floor of this offense as a whole. Needless to say, I'm very excited about that. I also think that Pinero's limited range makes the 49ers a pretty interesting candidate to get aggressive on more fourth downs around midfield. Picture this. If the 49ers are outside the opponent's 35-yard line and it's 4th and short, I think we see them go for it way more often than they did with Moody. With Moody, oftentimes you would kind of think about maybe trying a long-range kick, let him try a 55, let him try a 57-yarder, maybe even punt it, right? But in those 4th and short situations, I think we see them go for it way more. And I think that's a good thing. The 49ers offense is good despite all these injuries, and keeping good players on the field is always a good thing. So Jake Moody is out. Eddie Pinero is in. Do you think that this is a good move for the 49ers? Are you excited to watch Pinero kick? Leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. Now, the kicker swap was not the only roster move that the 49ers made on Tuesday. George Kittle was officially placed on injured reserve, opening up a spot on the 53-man roster that will be filled by Kendrick Bourne. Now, that's all well and good, but now the 49ers have only 2 tight ends on the active roster, Luke Farrell and Jake Tonjes. And as fond as I am of those two after last week's game, you can't really run a legit NFL offense with only 2 tight ends on the roster, at least not a Kyle Shanahan offense. So I think the 49ers are going to have to add a tight end somewhere. Does that mean that someone gets cut from the 53 to make room for a third tight end? Does Brady Willis get the promotion to the active roster? Or does he stay on the practice squad and use his standard elevations? I'm not really sure, but I am definitely curious about how they're going to handle this. Also, receiver Robbie Chosen was released from the practice squad. Now, letting go of Chosen makes sense to me. The receiver room's a little crowded, and I don't think that Chosen was going to get elevated anytime soon, especially not once Kendrick Bourne was brought in. But that leaves a spot on the practice squad open, which is going to be useful for the roster juggling that the Niners will need to do while they wait for their offense to get healthy. I think the most likely option is that we see a tight end fill that spot and assist Brady Willis with those elevations while Kittle is out. I mean, you look around the league, Ross Dwelly's available, and there's some interesting veteran options out there who I think could potentially join Brady Willis on the practice squad. Michael Pruitt, Hayden Hurst, Jeff Swaim, CJ Uzama, Anthony Ferkser. These are all veterans who, have had long careers in the NFL who could step in and be a tight end 3 for a few weeks if needed, right? My favorite options there, probably CJ Uzama and Michael Pruitt. Both of those guys have been good blocking tight ends in the past while contributing to passing offenses earlier in their careers as well. Regardless of whoever the Niners bring in, they're going to be short-term options while Kittle recovers. But I want to give a sneaky candidate for that last practice squad spot. Now, this would be crazy, but I think that there is a chance that if Jake Moody clears waivers, the 49ers might bring him back in that practice squad spot. I know it sounds insane, but if we've seen anything from this regime when it comes to Jake Moody, they were really hesitant to give up. And I wonder if there's a part of Kyle Shanahan and a part of John Lynch that isn't quite ready to let go just yet. I wonder if they keep Jake Moody on that practice squad, try and rehab his confidence, try and keep him in the building, and maybe give him another shot at the starting spot next year. Now, would I agree with that choice? Absolutely not. But could I see it? I think I could. So keep an eye out for who fills that last practice squad spot for the 49ers. Now, back to the tight ends. Like we said, there's going to be a lot of potential short-term Band-Aid veteran options who could be brought in while Kittle is out, right? But the Niners might swing yet another trade. All right, let's think about it. Tight end, not a super valuable position by any means. And I'm sure that you can find tight ends out there for relatively cheap who could help this team. What about a guy like Dawson Knox from the Bills, right? Knox is an expensive backup at a low value position. That is not a good combination. And generally, those are the types of guys that teams look to move on from. The Bills spent a first-round pick on fellow tight end Dalton Kincaid, who's a much more explosive receiver than Knox and is really looking to take a big step as their starter. And if you watch Sunday Night Football like I did, you got to see one of my favorite prospects in the entire 2025 NFL Draft, Bills tight end Jackson Hawes, catch a deep bomb in the fourth quarter that was nearly a game-tying touchdown. Now, I am very high on Jackson Hawes as a blocker, so if he's making catches like he did on Sunday, I think Dawson Knox and his bloated contract are out the door in Buffalo. If the 49ers send a fifth-round pick, I bet the Bills would be willing to eat some of that Knox contract. Now, Dawson Knox is not exactly a future star, right? This is not going to be like the long-term tight end of the future. Knox is already 29, but he would comfortably be the best backup tight end the 49ers have ever had in the Shanahan era. Knox is a good blocker and a consistently productive receiver and a guy that can just be reliable for an offense who could really use that reliability. I'd love to see the Niners get out there and trade for Dawson Knox, but what do you think? Leave a comment down below. Should the 49ers trade for Dawson Knox, or should they go sign a guy like Ross Dwelley instead? Leave a comment with your thoughts. Now, as I mentioned before, Kendrick Bourne was officially signed on Tuesday, and it looks like he's wearing his old number 84. Now, I know I've mentioned it on the show already, but I am so excited to watch KB play for the 49ers again, especially matching up with the Saints. It really reminds me of that iconic 2019 matchup between the Niners and the Saints, where Drew Brees and Jimmy G battled it out. Bourne was a part of that team with Emmanuel Sanders and Raheem Mostert and all those guys. And now he's a part of this new look Niners team. What a full circle moment for Kendrick Bourne to come on back to the Bay. His energy is absolutely infectious, and I think he's going to pair really well with guys like Ricky Pearsall and Juwan Jennings, who feed off that kind of energy. The celebrations, the morale, the energy, the vibes, KB is bringing it all back. I cannot wait for the first time he moves the chains. I mean, I'm getting fired up just talking about it. And I think that KB's experience in the system and his reliability on key third downs is going to go a long way. This team needs consistency at wide receiver, and I think Bourne is the perfect player to bring that. He's also a guy who knows how to play his role, right? He had to do that early in his career with his first stint with the 49ers, playing behind guys like Deebo Samuel and Emmanuel Sanders. And he had to do that in New England as they brought in more and more players around him. And Bourne's role is going to change considerably as the year goes on. But as of right now, in week 2, I think he's going to be a starting wide receiver. And the team is definitely going to rely on him to win a game this weekend. We did get some good news on the receiver front on Tuesday, because Kendrick Bourne might not be alone out there running routes opposite of Ricky Pearsall. Juwan Jennings had a positive CT scan after a positive MRI earlier this week. That means that Juwan has avoided a long-term shoulder injury, and he's officially designated right now as day-to-day. That is all according to Adam Schefter. With Jennings day-to-day, this really increases his chances to play on Sunday. Still not a guarantee, of course, but this is undoubtedly good news on the Jennings front. He looked like he was in real pain on the sidelines. I was very worried that this was going to be a long-term injury. If Jennings doesn't play, we may still be in some trouble. But for a second here, let's say he does play. At wide receiver, you've got Ricky Pearsall, Juwan Jennings, Kendrick Bourne, MVS, Sky Moore, and potentially Jordan Watkins. Now, the original return date we all expected for Watkins to come back from his ankle sprain was this Saints game in week 2. And on Tuesday, Watkins put out a cryptic tweet of just a smiley face. Very cryptic of him, classic wide receiver tweet, if you will. But all of a sudden, you've got a room of 6 healthy wide receivers who can each bring something different to the offense. Pearsall is your X and your master of the deep middle. Jennings is a ferocious blocker and a yak threat. Bourne has got great hands and comes up clutch on third downs. MVS stretches the field and he blocks really well. Jordan Watkins stretches the field and he can make plays after the catch. And Sky Moore is your returner and a gadget guy to kind of mix things up. Not to mention Malik Turner and Russell Gage are still on the practice squad if you need them. If you're going to play games without George Kittle, you're probably going to need a full cabinet of receivers, and the Niners cabinet is slowly starting to fill back up. You toss in Christian McCaffrey, who had more receiving yards than rushing yards last week, and you've got a legitimately interesting set of weapons for whoever plays quarterback on Sunday. Now, I'm not going to back off my take that Mac Jones starting means the 49ers will lose this game, but I will admit that surrounding Jones with healthy weapons is always going to be helpful. So we've been talking about the 49ers wide receiver room all summer long, but what do you think of the current state of the position? Do you think that the current group of 6 can carry the 49ers to a win on Sunday? Leave a comment below. And of course, let me know down below if you enjoyed. Leave a comment, leave a like, and let me know if there's any topics that you'd like to see me cover. Thank you all for watching, and subscribe for 49ers videos 5 days a week. I'm Brady Grustas at GrustasBrady on X. This has been Niners Now, and I'll see you tomorrow.